The Chargers 2025 draft class is officially complete, and I really liked what they did as a whole, but what I loved was them giving Justin Herbert a ton of new weapons.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there who have been with us, not just today and making us your first listen, but throughout this entire draft process, and it's so fun to actually know now who is on this team. But to make sure you never miss an episode, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, after that Houston playoff game, the Chargers general manager Joe Ortiz and coach Jim Harbaugh said that they failed Justin Herbert. Well, they went to rectifying that with a lot of offensive picks in this 2025 draft class. So we got to talk about them loading up on weapons, but still being able to spend some resources on the defensive side as well, addressing some of that front, and then taking a couple of dart throws late at some defensive, maybe / special teams type players.
Yeah, we thought there might be a special teams linebacker. We thought there might be special team safety, and it looks like that's what they got. And the draft I really like, but there is one very obvious Achilles heel that for me maybe takes it from a good to a great had it gone a different way. But today's episode is brought to you by the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada draft pick of the week later in the show. David, one thing is clear now that we get to see the entire picture of this 2025 Chargers draft class, and that was the Chargers were committed to getting Justin Herbert more weapons. That was a major factor in what happened in that playoff loss, like you talked about with the Texans. There were other factors too, and we'll talk about that, but one of the biggest things that it seemed like they were going into this draft saying was, we're never going to have a box score that looks like that again, which was Ladd McConkey doing everything and everybody else doing nothing. And they did everything they could to try to make that a lot better and give Justin Herbert a lot of weapons to use around him, including 4 of the top 6 picks they had in this draft, their first and their second round pick. And then in the 5th round, they doubled down again with a deep threat and a versatile tight end that is a pass catching threat. That is how you try to spend resources on weapons, David, because now it's like, if you hit on 2 of those guys, if you hit on 3 of those guys, now you have weapons for Justin Herbert on the cheap for the next 4 seasons at least.
Well, and I just love the way that they were, able to spread it around in all different facets of the offense. It wasn't just, hyper focused on one particular area. They wanted, they saw an opportunity to grab an impact running back, a guy that can kind of do a little bit of everything to help their running game. They did that first and foremost. Then they get a wide receiver that can separate, that can go up and get the football, that can make plays that they desperately needed to add. And then, going on later in the draft, getting that tight end that we've been clamoring for, that we've been just pounding the table. Please get a weapon there. And they did. So I think from that perspective, looking at all of those avenues, all of the different ways of these guys and how they can affect the offense and how they can make it better, make it deeper, make it harder to defend, I think you really have to appreciate the approach from that perspective.
Yeah, I understand it. I get why they did it. I would have done things a little bit different, and we'll talk about that in certain parts of the draft. But as far as we're just going to pour resources into these weapons and give Justin Herbert more because he obviously didn't have enough last year, I like the strategy there. And I think it was also very, you can't even say really surprising, but very Joe Ortiz-like for them to not be able to make it through this draft without making a trade, right? Day 3 comes along. Joe Ortiz starts feeling a little froggy, like, man, we haven't made a trade yet. But they do end up making the trade, trading 2 of their 6th round picks, the 181st pick and the 209th pick in the 6th round, to move up to pick 165 to get a guy that they really like and a guy they felt like they missed out on at, with the Keith Lambert-Smith pick. They end up going at 165 with Oronde Gadsden II, the tight end from Syracuse, a super productive tight end. But David, of course, we never thought they would use all 4 of those 6th round picks. And then they waited until round 5 and they said, okay, well, we'd rather have an extra 5th round pick than, 4 6th round picks.
I mean, I was saying it all along. As soon as they were awarded those 4 6-round picks, I was like, ammunition. There it is. Trade capital. The ability to move around a little bit later on in the draft. And if you got a guy that you want to zero in on that you covet, that you got to go make a move for, what does it matter? You know, packaging two of your 4 6-round picks together to go improve that pick, to go get a guy that you absolutely had to have. Clearly, the Chargers were thinking along that same calculus, and they made that move.
Yeah, when I understand why, because I like the player a lot too. This is sneakily one of my favorite picks of the draft. Getting Oronde Gadsden II, a guy who surprisingly lasted that long with 2 900-yard seasons in the books, led all tight ends in 2022 with 969 receiving yards, as someone who transitioned to that position in college, a couple seasons in, and a big playmaker, something I said when he was drafted. Per the Beast, 4th in 20-plus yard catches, right, with 16 20-plus yard gains last season, and also 17 contested catches. And you see it when you watch him. He's a guy that can make big plays, and a guy that just has kind of an unnatural feel for a tight end as a receiver. In one of the games we were watching, I think it was against Cal, just a nice toe-tapping catch as he's spinning, finding the ball, locating it, and being able to bring it in while also having the spatial awareness of where the sideline was. A diving catch in that game as well. You can see, okay, hey, maybe there's some things in the blocking game that'll have to come along for him, and maybe he'll never be great at that. But as far as a mismatch, as far as a weapon goes, this is a guy that feels like he could be that.
Oh, 100%. He's going to be that. I mean, you put on the tape and you watch him, you're like, okay, this guy's going to be a problem. I mean, the catch radius, the strong hands, the ability to fight through contact, to be able to go kind of get, be a friendly receiver to your quarterback if he doesn't make the perfect throw. He has the radius to be able to go get the football in that situation. He has that speed to threaten the seam. He's a good yards after catch type receiver, a guy who's, really able to run away from guys. Like, he has really long strides as well. Obviously, he's 6'5", so that's going to happen. But yeah, it's very easy to see how it's going to translate with him, very, very quickly in this offense. I mean, this is the type of tight end we wanted. We wanted a guy who was primarily a wide receiver type, of player. And hey, he was a former wide receiver, and you can see it in the way he sets up his routes and the way he sets up the defensive players that are trying to guard him. All of that is very, very apparent. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to see what he's going to be able to do adding into this really, really effective play action offense.
One, I think the guys you already have in the room make you feel better about someone with these kind of deficiencies coming into it and bringing something different to the table, which he absolutely does. And I think this was the Chargers' kind of last-ditch effort to find an impact player at the position. They felt like they needed to go up to go get it, and I understand that. But one of the most surprising things was watching the Chargers double dip at receiver as early as they did. We're talking about weapons for the first 6 picks. That's because the first of their 5th-round picks at 158, Lambert-Smith, was not a guy I saw coming 217th on the consensus mock draft board, but is someone that Dane Brugler had a 4th or 5th round grade on. So it seems kind of right around where he valued this guy. But David, it's easy to see what the thought process was behind this. I feel like the Chargers maybe liked this guy more than maybe some other teams did, but he is a deep threat, 6 foot, 190 pounds, 4.3, 740.
Yeah, 4.3, 740. And I remember watching one of his games. He caught like a little kind of slant or a little in route, got past the defender and was gone. I mean, the only other person that was next to him was his teammate escorting him into the end zone. So he has that type of explosive speed. He has a pretty good catch radius himself. He has some pretty crazy long arms that he, really uses to his, advantage out there for sure. So I think that's kind of what he brings to the table. He's going to be your field stretcher. He's going to be your guy that you send on those go routes that you're going to use, because the Chargers in their play action offense, they use those go routes, those stretch the field type routes. And this is that type of guy that's meant specifically kind of for that role.
Yeah, and Trey Harris can be a deep threat, big playmaker, but this is a dude who does it differently with kind of that pure speed aspect of it. 4 straight seasons with at least 167+ yard catch per Eric Smith. Can catch us. Both these guys that we talk about, Oronde Gadsden, Lambert-Smith, both of them have yak potential, and it wasn't really what their game was at the collegiate level. We watched a really good Gadsden yak game because he had 2 big gains on it, but most of his yardage came, before the catch, or at the catch point, basically. Yeah. With Lambert-Smith, I think I was just surprised the Chargers went in the direction of wide receiver instead of potentially going with like an offensive lineman. I understand it. The conversation when he got the phone call to find out he was a Charger with Sanjay Law felt personal. This feels like a Sanjay Law project, someone he really, really liked and sees something more in than maybe just a deep threat. But this is somewhere where if I had to change one part of the Chargers draft, I'd probably change this part of it. And it's nothing against him as a receiver, but I probably would have put my focus here in the 5th round, maybe on an offensive lineman. To me, that is the Achilles heel of this draft class. It's nothing against the guy they took in the 6th round. But the one thing is, you can have weapons. You need to protect Justin Herbert to use them. So we're going to get into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting, because Gametime makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets. Even when the demand is sky high, prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. I've never had an event I was going to that I couldn't find tickets on with Gametime. But with Gametime, one of the other great things is with the last minute deals, you can save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, or theater. And you can also toggle in all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. And you can actually see the exact view that you can get from the seat. So if you're going to go to a playoff game, you want to know you're going to have a good view, and you get that with Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, David, well, let's talk about where the Chargers' Achilles heel of this draft class was, because we talked about it so much leading up to it, and we talked about the biggest needs for this team when we went through the mock drafts. There was going to be a position that felt like the Chargers addressed too late. And what that position was, we ended up going with running back because we didn't think it was as big of a need. The Chargers put that on its head in day one, right? They used their first round pick on a running back, which meant maybe one of the more kind of pressing needs that you have was going to wait a little bit longer than maybe you thought it should have. And for this draft class, it's very simple. It's the offensive line. And I think maybe the narrative needs to change for this team, who has drafted now 5 receivers in the first 2 drafts of this regime, including 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick, and a couple of 7th-round picks, and only 2 offensive linemen, 1 in the first round, and then this year, 1 in the 6th round. But to me, that's the part of this draft class, maybe what stops it from being great and maybe is only good in my mind. I don't think they came out of this draft class with enough competition for the starting left guard spot to make me feel really, really good about it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I truly believe they feel like they have enough bodies there. They have enough people that can possibly play the position, but
they have
I
bodies
don't know.
For sure. Do they have talent? That's that's the hard thing.
Yeah, do they have talent is the question, right?
Yeah.
And do they have talent at the left guard position, which right now it's hard to see that. Now, still a lot of time between now and when the season starts, but coming out of the draft, not getting, a guy that can be your left guard, or at least provide legitimate competition, because somebody who's played that position, someone who can come in and really kind of make all of those weapons that you were able to select come to life, right? Because, the other big problem was that they couldn't protect Justin Herbert. And so it doesn't matter how many shiny new toys that you have, if you're not able to allow those toys to actually catch a football. That's where the offensive line part of it comes in. So, yeah, I think you look at this draft, they did a great job of kind of systematically taking care of a lot of their needs, with one glaring caveat, and that being the offensive line. It definitely was something I know we both felt like they waited too long to address.
It just basically feels like they waited until a point where they were probably going to get a project at that position, when we were hoping they could get a player who could compete for that job in year one. And this is not an indictment of Branson Taylor. It's really not. It's an indictment of how long they waited to try to address it. And we'll see what happens, right? But I do think if you could go back and play, hindsight is 2020, of course, and this is based on the guys that we liked, obviously, but if you take Keandre Lambert-Smith and you swap him with Miles Frazier, right, in round 5, when you had a chance to go get, Dane Brugler's 5th-ranked guard, a guy that had a 3rd-round grade on him, based on his board, obviously not the Chargers board. They told you they didn't want him because they passed up on him in the 5th round when they could have had him.
Yeah.
But if you switch that out and you find another deep threat wide receiver, late in the 6th round where you end up taking Branson Taylor, it feels like it makes this whole draft class feel different. That doesn't mean it actually will be, right? Like, that's just what it feels like. And for me, I would have gone Miles Frazier in round 5 and felt like, okay, well, this is someone where it's kind of borderline, but maybe there's a chance he could push for that starting job this season. But since you waited till round 6 and you waited till pick 199, you're going to come out of this draft feeling a certain kind of way. And to your point, there's a lot of time. And there's one thing, I'm not going to panic about it, because Joe Ortiz showed us last year that he will be very active after the draft. I mean, these are just the guys that last year they took after the draft or got on the team. Tony Jefferson, Elijah Molden, Hassan Haskins, Taylor Heineke, Tierra Tart, Bud Dupree. All those guys came after the draft, right?
6 guys.
There is still a lot of time. And we'll see what happens with Branson Taylor. Because the thing is, David, is I actually like the guy that they picked, but he is a tackle that they're going to try to convert to a guard.
Right, which, I mean, honestly, is a pretty common practice when it comes to later round type of guys. You see traits, you kind of see things where you're like, maybe a move inside might help this particular player. And I think with Branson Taylor in particular, a move to guard, I think, would be more suitable with how he plays and what he brings to the table. From what I was able to watch and observe, this guy has real legitimate strength. Like, if he's able to get his hands on you and he's locked out, then you're not going anywhere. That's the end of your play. So I did see that repeatedly throughout the process. I think, he was solid in pass protection, when he was doing it, which he was playing left tackle. So, you better have some ability there. But I think with speed, quickness, I think that's where he really kind of struggled to overcome those issues, which when you move inside, that gets mitigated because you have help on both sides of you. So you don't have to be out there on an island, which is why these tackles get paid so much money, at least the best ones in the game, because it is exceedingly difficult because you're trying to block the best athletes in the world.
Yeah, I mean, the hand strength is really good. Big hands, really good grip strength. I mean, the arms, it's kind of interesting. It depends who you believe. The combine said they were 32 3/4 inch, and then they grew almost a full inch by the time he got to his pro day. So I'm going to lean towards the combine numbers. So, definitely not super long arms for this guy, but I do think that you're right. I mean, the deficiencies that he has in his game are minimized by putting him inside at guard, which brings on a different set of issues. And as we've seen with other tackles tried to turn guards, as many tried to during the Tom Telesco regime, it's not always that simple. It didn't really work last year when the Chargers tried to do it with Trey Pipkins. Yes, He played guard for almost the whole season, but he was not an above average guard at that position. And I think that's what this class comes down to as far as the disappointment and where they took a guard, not who they took a guard. If you had to put money on it right now, you would say that the favorites for that left guard position, assuming Zion Johnson is going to be your center in 2025, are Bradley Bozeman and Trey Pipkins, which means, if they were to make no more additions, which I really, think it is, you can't assume at this point because we've seen them make so many after the draft.
Yeah.
You potentially have 2 of the 3 interior offensive linemen as the same guys you had in that playoff game against the Texans where they got absolutely wrecked.
Yeah.
That's not good enough. It truly isn't. And I think you just hope there's an urgency there. There's a realization there. You go back to pre-draft, right, when Daniel Popper's asking about the interior of the offensive line. You have Joe Ortiz kind of saying, well, we won 11 games, which is easy to say then. But what we said then when we heard that is, they're going to tell us exactly how much of an issue they think it is by the draft resources they're about to spend into it. And they didn't, right? They took Branson Taylor. So he did miss 7 games last year with a torn meniscus. I think that definitely hurt his draft stock. I think as a player, I liked what I saw. I understand the vision there. He does project purely as a guard for me, not someone that's a guard tackle. And Joe Ortiz told us that they're going to throw him in there at guard. I don't think they're going to waste his time trying to play tackle. That's not where he's going to work out if he's going to work out at the next level. Good job recognizing stunts. Pretty good power when he plays with leverage, which he has to do a little bit better of a job at. But I do think, hey, I can see it a little bit. I mean, Tyler Schoon, I retweeted a post of him going up against Jared Verse in 2023. You see the talent there.
He acquitted himself well. Yeah.
He did. And in the times he's losing, usually you're talking about speed on the outside or guys with quick inside moves, things that get minimized on the inside if you're at guard. So I like the player. Maybe he will push for the starting left guard spot. But waiting that long to do it feels like a lesser chance of that happening and more of a chance that you have two of the three same guys and you're a Mekhi Becton injury from maybe having the same three guys, and also two of them just playing in different positions and positions they haven't played before, unless it's Bradley Bozeman, who has played some guard but is a natural center. So that is the Achilles heel of this draft class in my mind right now. But I really liked a lot of the other things, especially pouring resources into the defensive front, going with a defensive lineman in round 3 and doubling down in round 4 with an edge rusher that we feel really good about in Kyle Kennard. So we're going to get into that and a couple of dart throws in the secondary and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. The Armada Player of the Week is brought to you by our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one guy that stands apart, the guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the Chargers forward as we look ahead to next season. This week's Armada clear-cut player of the week is Omarion Hampton, the guy that absolutely out of this draft class is the one that most reminds me of a Nissan Armada. Heavy duty, rugged, conquers the road with capability and confidence. If you say those things, you're talking about one guy, and it's Omarion Hampton. And I think when you're talking about him, has the speed to get you where you want to go, has the toughness to do anything you need to do, that is Omarion Hampton, and that is the Nissan Armada. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Omarion Hampton can do here. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of their outstanding vehicles. Take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, David, well, we talked about kind of the negative of this draft class and the part we really, really liked, which was loading up on the weapons and just trying to give Justin Herbert some more help in that regard. But the defense, I like the way they went with it too. I mean, there was always, again, going to be positions you wish they addressed earlier. You wanted to see kind of the heir apparent at edge rusher in this class. You might not get that in the 4th round, right? But I liked the way they went about it, and I liked after they went with Omarion Hampton, after they took Trey Harris in round 2, they said, okay, we need to transition to the defensive side and specifically getting better in the trenches on the defensive front. Going with Jamaree Caldwell, a guy we talked about on our live show on Saturday, a guy that we liked, but also taking Kyle Kennard, a guy that really flew under the radar, a guy that I didn't really hear a lot in the lead up to the draft, which is surprising because the dude won Best SEC Defender in the country last season. The Bronco Nagurski Trophy winner as the nation's top defender. Was surprised not to see more hype on Kyle Kennard, David, because when you usually have that and you're doing it in the SEC, those are usually things that translate well to the next level.
Yeah, big time sack numbers, big time tackle for loss numbers. This guy's got real juice. I mean, when you're watching Kyle Kennard, like, this guy can really get after the quarterback, get around the edge with speed and with quickness. Like, I was watching a game against against Alabama where I think it was 3 or 4 straight plays in a row where he just wrecked the play. Either got a sack, got in the quarterback's face, caused him to get off his spot and move. Like, this guy has game-wrecking potential, and you see it right away. It's I think the run support probably is probably the avenue in which he can improve his game. But when you're bringing him in, for looking for a guy that has kind of maybe a little bit more of a contrasting style to the 2 edge rushers that you have in that room, I think he's going to be a nice complement and somebody that, they absolutely needed to bring in. They had to bring in somebody who has that kind of a profile, and I think you would enjoy watching, and you are going to enjoy watching Kyle Kennard get after the quarterback on Sundays.
Yeah, I think that I liked him a lot. I mean, it was nice because one of the games that we had was him going up against Will Campbell, and you get to see him against a top 5 pick, and I really thought he had some good wins against him. But, I mean, 17.5 sacks, 27 tackles for loss over the last 2 years between not just last year at South Carolina, but the year before that at Georgia Tech. I think part of the reason he falls is because maybe doesn't have the elite bend physically. I know some people think that he's a little too stiff, but, man, did he do a good job of getting the corner when he really wanted to. And I mean, timed the snap very well, really quick inside move. If he can't win on his initial rush, he definitely has a problem with counters that he has to get better at. Pushes himself too far upfield sometimes trying to get the corner. There are some things to work on. I mean, especially as a run defender, but for someone that can kind of bring more to this edge rushing room, another element to this edge room this season, and also be someone that you feel could turn into something more than that down the road. I think he checks those boxes. And I think when you're talking about, 34-inch arms, 6'4", can get the corner, 4'7", 340, pretty good testing numbers. Yeah, I seems like a guy to take a chance on, and a guy that I didn't think would necessarily have that kind of production for a 4th-round pick. That's what Dane Brugler had on his grade, was a 4th-rounder, so I don't think this was a reach, even though some people think it was. When I saw him, I thought more to myself, I'm surprised I didn't hear more about this guy. Not like, oh, I can't believe the Chargers used the 125th pick on this guy. It feels like he can be an impact player for you, a role player for you as soon as 2025. And I think if you're getting that in the 4th round, you're doing something right. So I think the Chargers told us a lot in this draft, including we care about real production, and we care about real production in big-time programs. And if you look at the Chargers' entire 9-player draft class, there wasn't a single one of those players that didn't play in a Power 4 conference in 2025. And a lot of these guys, whether it's Gadsden, whether it's Kyle Kennard, whether it's even, Keandre Lambert-Smith, he had real production last year, over 900 yards. Like, these guys had production, and they had production at a high level of football. And that's something you can tell the Chargers really care about in this draft class. But we knew that the Chargers late in the draft, David, after going the way that the first kind of, 6 rounds started, that there was probably going to kind of be some dart throws at the end of the draft. We had talked about going up to, hey, maybe it's a linebacker. Maybe they find that long-term kind of Nick Niemann, Amon Ogbongbemiga replacement. Or maybe they go with, a safety to add some youth to that room. Maybe we'll see a corner, and we thought they could even take a corner earlier. But what they decided to do was use their last couple of picks on the secondary. First in round 6, pick 214 with R.J. Mickens, the safety from Clemson. And in round 7, pick 256, one spot away from being Mr. Irrelevant, we got Triquez Bridges, the cornerback from Florida, who spent 4 years before that at Oregon. 2 dart throws, David. When we did our mock draft, we ended up picking Dan Jackson with one of our, I think maybe even with this exact pick at 214, one of the 6th-round picks. Hey, a guy that can give you a little youth, maybe you turn something into something at the safety position, but a guy you think is going to be a special teams demon no matter what. And then, that seems to be, in reality, R.J. Mickens kind of going for similar roles, looking for special teams player. And I think you could say the same thing with Triquez Bridges. A big, fast cornerback / safety. And both these guys seem like, hey, these are special teams picks that maybe can turn something else in. And why not take a couple dart throws at a couple positions you feel deeper at anyways?
Yeah, hey, the offensive coordinator got what he wanted. Jesse Minter got what he wanted. What about Ryan Ficken? He gets to get a couple of guys that can affect his part of the football game as well. And hey, R.J. Mickens, one of the things that he said is, I love special teams. And, that's going to be music to Mr. Ficken's ears. And hey, let's be real. Both of these guys are going to have to make it on special teams to be able to make it on the roster. Like, this is going to be a very competitive football team. Like, right now, these guys are probably going to be battling it out for that, one of those last few spots on the roster. So, hey, just because you're getting drafted, as they showed last year, does not mean that you have an automatic spot on this team. So they're going to have to make their way. I like, what they did as far as trying to find guys that have a little bit more speed, a little bit more range, and see what they can do, see how they can affect the football, and see how they can make their way on special teams.
Absolutely. And Bridges probably fighting with the Jaw Taylors and the Dean Leonards of the world for a spot at the end of this roster, right? I think they like the safety and corner experience there. R.J. Mickens, a guy, I think the thing with both these guys, neither one of these guys minds tackling for defensive backs. Both of these guys like to tackle and have shown they can do it at a high level. And I think it's kind of surprising to see guys pick this late, have the seasons they had last year. R.J. Mickens, 75 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 9 pass breakups, and 2 interceptions at a big-time program in Clemson.
That's good production.
That's really good production. That's legit production. 17 run stops, 9 coverage stops, according to Dane Brugler. And, 2 career touchdowns allowed in 1,285 coverage snaps per PFF.
I like that.
That's pretty good. And then even, Triquez Bridges, a guy that Dane Brugler had as an undrafted free agent, even at 6'2", 196, 4.45 40, maybe a tweener because he split time last year between safety and corner, but led last year, even if he didn't start the whole season, all of Florida with 70 tackles. He only allowed 14 receptions all season and allowed 0 touchdowns. In 2 of the last 3 seasons, he has 8 passes defensed and multiple interceptions at Oregon and Florida. That's real production, especially for late picks, David. So easy to see why the Chargers wanted to snag these guys, and definitely see, adding some youth, adding some future and special teams value there. I like those picks. And, we've got to watch a little bit of all these guys so far. We're going to keep kind of digging deeper into them. I got to watch at least one game for all these guys, and I'm pretty comfortable with how I feel about them as draft picks. But we're going to get more into them as the week goes on, and get a little deeper profiles on some of these guys. But we wanted to just talk about the draft class in a whole today. A draft class that both of us like. And I think the other thing here, too, is like, they've earned our trust to a certain extent that they see something that we don't see. And I think that's the nice thing about this new regime is when you hit on 2 5th-round picks, you're like, hey, I can see why the Chargers are taking these guys later in the draft, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they can get an impact player at edge out of Kyle Kennard in year 1, even if it's a 4th-round pick. Or maybe even, Branson can get in there and surprise people, even as a 6th-round offensive lineman, and Branson Taylor. So, like, they get some credit in that regard, and they're going to get some leeway, and we're going to probably be higher on their draft than maybe some of the national experts are. But I do think the biggest fair criticism is waiting too long on the offensive line. But I do think what I love the most is just, hey, it's not going to be because of lack of weapons or the lack of trying to get weapons why we go down in 2025. Now
we got a whole armory now.
Totally, but show some urgency to trying to protect Justin Herbert enough to use those weapons and to give Omarion Hampton a real chance to be a great, back and to give these receivers some time to get down the field. That's the next most important thing. But we want to hear what you guys thought about the draft class. Tomorrow is our buy or sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Chargers overreactions and storylines. And I know right after the draft, those are definitely all flying around. So make sure you guys hit us up at Locked On LAC on Twitter to give us your buy or sells, or on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, or on our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, or we'll put a post out on YouTube as well. But we always like hearing from you guys. So if you want to call into 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers voicemail buy or sell, we'd be happy to hear from you there too. But to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of the social media places I just mentioned. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow for the first buy or sell after the 2025 draft. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.